I think that we become more safe for other people by first being able to be safe with ourselves. So if I am living my life outside of my own body and my own experience because it doesn't even feel safe to be in my own body and in my own experience, then how can I be with anybody else to be safe for them? So my work is getting safe with myself, noticing, recognizing, working through my triggers that have to do with my hard stuff, my hard old stuff, getting through some of that stuff, being able to start the healing process. And I don't actually think that healing is something that stops. I don't think it's a process that starts and stops. I think we are always healing. We are always continuing to heal more and more. But if I'm able to start healing and I can feel safe with me, then I have a much better chance of being able to be a safe person for a lot of other people. And again, we've got these things happening between us all of the time. There's this exchange that's happening between us, our bodies and our brains, that is looking for that safety cue. Is this person present? Are they safe for me? Is this somebody that's going to be able to hold space for me? And we can hold the space for someone else when we can hold it for ourselves.
Welcome to the EQ for Entrepreneurs podcast. Like most business owners, you already know you need good business and marketing strategies to scale and be profitable. But at some point, you've hit the dreaded wall where you feel stuck and frustrated. EQ for Entrepreneurs is for business owners and leaders who are honest enough to admit that they just might be the ones holding their business back and are brave enough to change that.
We're Noble and Kathy, and every week we're having candid conversations about all things emotional intelligence and how growing that has allowed us to get out of our own way and is radically transforming both our businesses and our personal lives. This is the secret sauce strategy for modern entrepreneurs who are tired of hustling without seeing results and want to grow a business and a life that they love.
Entrepreneurs, influencers, and leaders, we are so excited for this episode. Episode
number 39. We have an interview for you guys today, and this interview is what the world needs now. I believe. This is my opinion, but I believe this is what the world needs now. I believe that we have gone through a global form of trauma, just with the whole coronavirus and the pandemic and everything that entailed. It's emotional trauma for people, not just the people who were sick, but the people who were afraid and being stuck at home and loss of jobs and loss of income and school and the kids, the graduations that were missed and the weddings that were canceled. Like, we have gone through a collective trauma. And then we rolled right into, before that was even over, our nation right now is in the middle of major racial disharmony. That's actually, probably an understatement of racial trauma. And we just knew, we have a friend, her name is Bethany Matheson. You're going to hear the introduction of her when we get into the interview, but this is what she does, is she specializes in trauma and in helping people heal their trauma. And so we knew we had to get her on the podcast. We knew we had to interview her because we have to heal this trauma that all of us have experienced. And guys, that's just in the last 3 or 4 months. That doesn't have anything to do with any of the trauma that's happened to us in our lives previously, from our childhood, from, anything that's happened. And here's the thing about trauma. We all have some. Because this thing is called life and it's not easy and nobody gets out unscathed. It just is how it is. And so we're left with two choices. If we either leave our trauma unhealed and it destroys us, it becomes destructive in our lives, or we do the work to start healing it. And we pray that this podcast is a first step to helping all of us heal any of the trauma that's happened recently, maybe that's been generational, or that we've just lived with for too long.
And we'd love it if you get value from this. Please share with friends, share on your social media platforms.
Leave us a review.
Yeah, leave us a review, rate us. If you're getting value, we'd really appreciate that. And what we're about is helping entrepreneurs navigate the emotional journey of running a business. And we are excited to be a part of this journey with you guys. Bethany!
Hi! Thanks so much, Bethany, for being on with us today.
Of course. I'm so happy to be.
Yes, man, it's so good to see you. We miss Big Jack. Give him a big hug for us when you see him.
I'm going to, yes.
Yeah, good. So, Bethany, can you tell us, what is your background? Tell us your ninja gangster background here.
I can. Yeah, so I am a licensed professional counselor. I am a registered yoga teacher, and I am a certified EMDR therapist. So all of that's different stuff that has to do with being a trauma specialist. So I'm a counselor, a psychotherapist, and I work almost exclusively with people who have a PTSD diagnosis or very high anxiety, severe depressive symptoms, stuff like that. So that's what I do.
Wow. I'm going to go out on a limb and say you need to be called something like that.
Yeah, Jackson likes to joke about all the letters behind my name now, but it's just all the different things that say that's what I do for a living, is help people who have been through trauma. So
yeah, no, and it's amazing. And just from what I've heard, you're really incredible at what you do in terms of really helping people get real results and breakthrough in their life when sometimes they have been stuck for what it sounds like is a very long time. So I think that's incredible. And let me just tell you guys why we asked Bethany to do this here today. Really, number one, because she's amazing and she's got just some incredible stuff, I believe, for everybody. But here's the thing. I was going to say this country, this world, our world is just coming off of what I believe was a globally traumatic experience. I think we have, as the human race, I think we've experienced trauma. And so far this year, it's only June. It's only June when we're recording this in the form of coronavirus and everything that went along with that, the quarantine, whatever you called it in your state, the stay at home or the lockdown, and healthcare professionals being on what felt like the front lines. There have been people who've lost their jobs. We've had people who've had their lives severely affected, kids out of school, people working from home. There has been just mass trauma. And so we went from that right into all this racial unrest in our country. And so right now, as we speak, there are still places in our country that are having not just peaceful protests, which that's wonderful, but not peaceful things. There's rooting, there's no, I said that wrong. There's looting, there's rioting, there's all these things. And as I was thinking about it, and I told Bethany this on a message that I had sent to her as we were setting this interview up, I said, as much, I don't think nobody thinks that the rioting and looting is okay. But I kind of understand where it's coming from. And Bethany understands on a whole different level than even I do. But here's the thing. When people have, it's this quote right here, pain that is not transformed will always be transferred. And so when you have trauma and pain that is swirling around inside you with no outlet, with no way to heal it, with no way to transform it, it will come out in destruction. It will come out either in self-destruction, financial destruction, relational destruction, health destruction, right? Property destruction. It comes out. And so it's like that pain is screaming to be seen. The pain is screaming to be healed. The pain is screaming to be resolved and helped. It's a cry for help. And I thought there's nobody better to help with this pain, with this kind of trauma than Bethany Matheson. So, because here's the thing, life happens to all of us. We all have some level of trauma in our lives. I believe if you live long enough, you're going to have something because it's life. And there are things that we can do to address that. We talk a lot about emotional intelligence and emotional quotient, and that goes a long ways. But I believe that trauma is something that is on a whole other level. And so we thought, let's call on the professional here and I just asked Bethany, I said, Bethany, is there anything that you could tell us or teach us about what can we do ourselves to even just begin addressing the trauma? Maybe it's just trauma from the last couple months. Maybe it's trauma from generations. Maybe it's trauma from an incident that's happened in our life. What does that look like? Talk us through that, Bethany.
Yeah. What you're saying is spot on. And I will say before I go into any of this, as people are listening to this, I hope that it's meaningful for them. If they get something out of it that they can apply, that's wonderful. I always give the disclaimer when I'm speaking anywhere that I want people to consult with their primary cares, their mental health professionals before they take any of this to heart or start using this advice, because we obviously don't know what their individual case is. So I'll just start by saying that. So something I've been thinking about a lot that I explain to a lot of people is that we have safety systems in our bodies. Our nervous system knows how to regulate us to try to stay safe, to try to survive, to stay alive as best as we can. And so I think one of the things that we're seeing is there are really specific types of triggers that get pushed, buttons that get pushed in us by different types of events. If we've already had hard and scary experiences in our lives, something like the pandemic, for example, can kind of feel like confirmation of scary things that have happened to us before. So there are triggers, buttons that I'm seeing that are being pushed kind of across the board. So for people who have had experiences where they feel trapped, helpless, powerless, out of control, people feeling responsible, those kinds of triggers that get planted in us, often actually all the way back when we're kids, those things are really rising to the surface in people in this situation, I think, in a very painful way, because it does leave people feeling like they don't know what's going to happen next. They don't know what they're going to do. They don't know how to move forward. So that's what I've been working on with a lot of people, is just trying to recognize, hey, there are a lot of triggers happening. And then trying to start working on ways to address those things. The other thing I'll say is that our nervous system has kind of like 3 go-to responses when we go through something hard. And you guys have probably heard of this before. You guys have heard the term like fight, flight, Yep. So there's actually 3. People leave off the third one. And our body tries to do it in order. Our body tries to move through flight first. So our body tries to get away from something that's hard. If that's not possible, the next option is fight. So we're seeing some big fight response in our country right now, right? Which makes a lot of sense. And if the fight response isn't working, that last option is called freeze, which is where the system, our whole nervous system, kind of shuts down. People refer to it as dissociating, but it's also just a shutdown, like a numbing response. So when people get triggered, they're feeling trapped or helpless or powerless, then their system starts trying to work through these options. It's like, okay, well, do I run away? Well, I can't run away. I'm stuck in my house. Okay, do I fight? Maybe I fight with my spouse more. Okay, maybe eventually I end up shutting down. I feel like I'm stuck on the couch and I just feel like I can't move. So it's kind of a universal experience that I'm noticing.
And how do you notice what you're doing? Is it just kind of paying attention to your own behavior, or are there signs? Like, are there signals in your body, or like, how do you know?
Yeah, I would say all of the above. Drastic behavior changes, we notice those. So if you're noticing yourself doing something that's really outside of what you normally do, so if, like, for example, if you're a really active person normally, and then you've noticed in the last few weeks, you just are feeling very sedentary. You just feel like you can't get moving. You feel really exhausted for what seems like no reason. That for me would be something that we would look at, we would pay attention to. It can be body symptoms. So symptoms of anxiety that people often experience, things like having headaches, chronic pain, like backache, stuff like that. feeling like it's difficult to breathe. That's a big one right now, especially because we talk about that a lot with COVID. We talk about that symptom in the body, but that's a big anxiety symptom, feeling like you are restricted in your capacity to breathe. So sometimes we look at physical symptoms like that too. And then there's, of course, the mental and emotional piece. So am I feeling very overwhelmed? Do I feel like my ability to control my emotions is limited? If my range of emotions has gotten smaller, but the expression of them has really gotten huge out of nowhere, that's kind of a good sign that something's going on. So, and then like the mental piece of it often ends up looking like racing thoughts, horribilizing thoughts, worst case scenario thoughts, spinning thoughts, feeling like you get stuck on the same thought and you can't get out of it. So it runs the spectrum of experiences.
Wow. No, that's fascinating. So when somebody goes through this realization, so talk us through this. Like, what does this look like? So if they're at home and they're looking at themselves saying, okay, I'm doing some things, I'm seeing these behaviors in myself, like, where do we even begin to help ourselves, to care for ourselves?
Yeah. I think that I think everyone that ever talks to me or works with me gets tired of me saying, just notice it. Because that's where we have to start. We have to start by just noticing. We notice I feel a certain way and I'm going to just notice, or I'm having this body symptom, I'm going to just notice, or I'm really emotionally feeling out of control. Okay, so I'm just going to notice it, because these things come in waves. It doesn't stay consistent. We don't stay at one level. We don't stay at a 10 all day, every day. It's this ebb and flow experience. So the first thing we do is we just have the space and the awareness to step in and say, okay, I'm picking up on the fact that I feel trapped. I feel it in my body. I feel it in my interactions with people. I feel it in the way that my house looks and feels right now. I feel it in the way that I'm communicating with people at work. I don't know. And so we just allow some space for that. And then once we know a little bit about what's going on, there are a lot of different ways to move through it. I would say severity of symptoms definitely is an important piece for people who feel like they are not being able to cope at this point. Then I always say, okay, get some help. Like, there are a lot of great helping professionals out there. There are a lot of professionals that are available via telehealth. We all have some capacity to work online at this point, or seek out, if you have spiritual leaders, even if you can't see them in person, I would seek them out over the phone or on Zoom like this, So taking different steps according to the different level of need. I also work with people on creating habits for their lives. We always call it like bookending your day. So if you can find a way to give the beginning of your day and the end of your day a lot more like nurture and self-care and awareness, then you're likely to see that throughout your day. You're feeling a little bit better. So we look at all the different areas, how can you tend to your physical, spiritual, mental, and emotional health, all of those different things. We look at, I'm a yoga teacher, so I'm always telling everyone should try yoga. But if yoga's not your thing, making sure that you're taking a walk every day, getting outside, that kind of stuff. Finding ways to be expressive about what's going on. So when things get stuck, like you were saying at the beginning of this, Kathy, when we get stuck, then we keep feeling more and more stuck. The way that we get some momentum and start to move through that is by having some outlet, some expression, whether it's talking to someone, writing, drawing, gardening, like I don't care what it is, coloring, anything, but some sort of outlet where there is an interaction between who am I as a person, what am I experiencing as a person. I'm going to show that to the world somehow outside of me.
And so all those things, would you say that those fall under self-care, or Like, are those the same? Because to me, those are some amazing things to do for self-care. Do those things also help treat trauma, which I'm guessing that they do, but are there other things that when there's deep-seated trauma that need to be looked at? Like, what's the differentiation between just self-care and trauma care? I guess that's a better way to phrase that question.
Totally. Yeah. So I have a perspective about trauma therapy or trauma treatment, and I will give you my perspective, and I will own that it's mine, and it's different than other therapists even sometimes, because I do a specific kind of style of therapy because of EMDR, which I can tell you guys what that is, but also what's something called somatic-based therapy, which is just a fancy way of saying body-based therapy. So I do all the clinical stuff, but it's the idea that you can't treat the trauma. You can't treat that without integrating the body and the brain at the same time. And so things like traditional talk therapy, while I do provide that, there's this added stuff that I bring in. So all of that to say, when I was giving those suggestions about moving your body every day and being expressive, those are things that I ask everybody to do that I work with, because they're good habits and they help people get momentum in their healing. However, there are certain kinds of trauma that we can work through on our own, and there are lots of ways to do that. But with certain other types of trauma, stuff that's really stuck, then we do need help with that. So the reason that we get to the point where some people have, they meet the criteria for PTSD, for post-traumatic stress disorder, is because there is an event or a series of events that have gotten stuck in their brain and their body. And so instead of remembering those moments, they're actually re-experiencing those moments every time there's a trigger for them. So that's where we need a different type of intervention.
And that's I think, you've told us before, that's kind of some of the EMDR stuff, right? And what's EMDR stand for?
Yeah, so EMDR is eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, which is really cumbersome to say. But it's the idea that there's something called bilateral stimulation. It's something that goes back and forth from the right and the left side of the body. And it's something that human beings have been doing naturally forever. We do it when we drum and when we dance and when we walk and when we run. It's the way that the body moves back and forth in a rhythm over and over. EMDR was created by a woman named Francine Shapiro, and she recognized when she was taking a walk that she was moving her eyes back and forth and that she was starting to feel better about something that was bothering her. And they've done a whole ton of research to identify the way that this bilateral stimulation helps take stuff that's stuck, that hasn't been digested by the brain, and moves it and files it the way that it needs to be, so that it's no longer being experienced over and over. It's being remembered like a typical memory.
That is so interesting to me. Noble does something. He does something when he's thinking. I think we've talked about this before. When he's thinking or like processing something, he kind of stares off into space and his eyes go back and forth really, really quickly. I don't know that I've ever seen anybody else does it, and he's not aware of it. And I've tried to do it, and it's really hard for me to do. Like, I don't even think I can't even do it as fast as he does. And every time I hear about EMDR, it just makes me think of that. Like, you must be doing some version of that or something. Like, I don't even know. It's just kind of funny.
I have no idea.
I've seen you do it too when you're thinking. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. No, and it is natural. Our system does it naturally. And it has to do with REM sleep. So the idea is that most things, even hard things, our system processes naturally through this natural bilateral stimulation that happens just in any average day, and hopefully when you're getting really good quality REM sleep, because there are eye movements that happen when people are sleeping, where their eyes move back and forth. So the brain digests a lot of information at that phase of the day. But again, what happens in your nervous system when you go through something like a big T trauma, and people use the example of combat frequently because it's one that most people can imagine because maybe they've seen it in a movie or something. But It's this idea that when you're in the middle of something that is excruciatingly hard and your whole system just has to focus on survival, that you don't get to process through or finish processing the body symptoms and the emotions of that moment. And so your nervous system just kind of tightens up, just holds on to it, assuming it's going to be processed at some point. And then it doesn't get processed. And then it becomes this pattern for people. So, they hear a car backfire, and all of a sudden, if they've had this combat experience, their system thinks that that's an IED and they've hit the ground and that's it. They're on the ground in the parking lot, because their system is trying to keep them safe.
Got it. That's fascinating. Okay. So, I want to back up just a skosh. So, you talk about this whole concept of noticing it, right? Just notice it. So what do those of us do, and I would fall in this category I'm about to ask you about, that I was raised as a stuffer and avoider.
An emotional stuffer.
Emotional stuffer and avoider. And I could actually write probably 2 great books on how to do that. So if anyone wants to know how to stuff and avoid their emotions, I am a PhD probably in both of those, but I don't recommend it. How does someone like that notice stuff if I have literally trained myself? I mean, like literally from my birth until not too long ago, I've never been aware of feelings and emotions. How do I even begin that self-awareness journey to even just start noticing?
Yep, I love it. It's a good question. That's why I am a somatic-based therapist also, because we can find our way in by starting to recognize physical cues. So a lot of times it has to do with the center line of the body. A lot of people describe things like stomach issues, tightness in their chest, heaviness in their chest, headaches, feeling like they can't swallow, stuff like that, or limbs. So tingling in your limbs, numbness in your limbs, heaviness in your limbs, stuff like that, right? So the way that I start this process with people is be like, okay, this is really interesting. So obviously there's something going on. I'm curious. When you have gone from 0 to 8 out of 10, maybe emotionally, all of a sudden you kind of skyrocketed up and you don't really know why. Instead of worrying about the why behind it in that moment, we go, okay, what's going on in your body right now? So what does your stomach feel like? What does your chest feel like? How do your arms and legs feel? Are you sweating? Is your heart beating a little bit fast? Okay, let's just notice that, because your body talks to you about the stuff that's happened to you. So if you start to recognize, I get this clenching feeling in my stomach every time I get emotionally dysregulated, you're going to be able to start noticing the body symptom before you get to that 8 out of 10. And then we start to calm the body down and help the body recognize, okay, actually I'm safe now. This is a trigger of old stuff that's not happening to me right now. And then once the body starts to regulate, we can turn on the thinking part of our brain and we can start to think more clearly.
And that was something, just what you're talking about with the brain, that was something that was fascinating to me when I started learning about emotional intelligence and started learning about our feelings and emotions, just the way that our brain is set up and how thoughts come into our brain. It's like they come in right from and if you're on the podcast, you can't see me, but I'm pointing to the back of my head, back kind of by the neck. And they come in way down there. And it's like they have to travel through our feelings and emotions, and you'll know all the technical words for it, but I'll just say that. I'll say it this way. They have to travel through the area where we process feelings and emotions, and before they get to the place where we think logically. So it's like it's almost impossible for us to have logical thoughts. It's always going to ping the emotions first. And when I read that, I was like, oh my gosh. Like if we don't know this, if we don't develop this self-awareness that you're talking about, like to say, well, objectively speaking, it's kind of impossible. We really can't. It's almost like we can't think objectively if we don't have this emotional awareness, if we don't have this, because whether we like it or not, the thoughts are running. It's running constantly through our feelings and emotions.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So we call it the amygdala alarm. Your amygdala is the part of your brain that controls your emotions or manages them, however you want to put it. And it's like a fire alarm in your brain. We explain it to kids this way. So when that alarm system goes off, something feels not safe, the amygdala alarm goes off, and the thinking, your brain is kind of like a hand. This is not my idea. There's another clinician that came up with this, but your brain's like a hand. Your amygdala is around here-ish. This is the thinking part of your brain, your prefrontal cortex, all that stuff up here that developed last, by the way, in your brain development. So when your amygdala alarm goes off, you're flipping your lid, your thinking part of your brain goes offline, and you cannot use the thinking part of your brain until the alarm is turned off.
Wow.
So you are literally correct about that. It's not something that we try to do. It is what has to happen. And so the only way to help regulate that is through the body. Do you realize that you produce more stress hormones in your gut than you do in your brain? So the sensation that's happening in your body is also the expression of it that's happening in your brain, but it happens in your body first. And so these more primitive systems in our body that are all focused around trying to stay safe, that's what gets all dysregulated in a trauma experience. And that's what we have to start addressing.
That is fascinating.
Wow. When do I sign up for Bethany's treatment, man?
Yeah. Well, I feel like I spend all day, every day telling people you're not crazy. Like, you're not crazy. I promise. You're not supposed to be able to control this better than you are. And you're not doing anything wrong. And you shouldn't be better at this than you are right now. Your whole body is just trying to keep you safe. That's why we get numb. That's why we turn off our feelings and shut down or go from 0 to 10, because our system is just trying to keep us safe. That's it.
Okay, that's huge what you just said. I hope y'all are catching this. You're not crazy. You're not crazy, because I know for me, I have done that. Like, I have thought, and he's feeling it right now.
I know.
I have thought, what's wrong with me? Like, why can't I just get this together? Yeah. Why do I feel this way? Why, like, I there've been different situations in scenarios where we've thought, are we the crazy ones? Like, are we the only, like, are we, and you start to question yourself, and you start to think, man, I thought I was as a person, I thought I had a little better together than this. And I think it's very freeing for people to know that, no, it's not you. Like, it's your brain. It's the things that have happened to us. And we just, like you said, we just don't have that awareness of what it's doing. Like, our brain is a beautiful, and not only do we think we're crazy, but we think this is all bad. Like, we think all these feelings are bad, and I shouldn't be feeling this, right? I shouldn't feel this way, but no, they are what they are. Like, the feelings are there. They're there to communicate with us. They're there to tell us something, to give us messages. And the important work is for us to honor them and to say, okay, you're here for a reason. You're here to serve me. What do I need to do? What does this look like? What does this look like next? So, were you going to say something with that, or?
No,
Okay.
No idea what just happened right there. I have no idea. Speaking of noticing,
yeah.
my Miggy alarm went off.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. It's hard stuff to talk about. That's why a lot of times we don't. It gets avoided all the time because we don't like talking about trauma because it feels yucky. Yeah, it just does.
Right, yeah.
I have a question. What if you could tell the humankind right now, coming out of coming out of, you know, the pandemic and the lockdown and everything with that, and working through, like, literally in the middle of all the racial tension that's happening, and with people, like, what do we need to know about trauma to just take the next healthy step forward?
My first trauma teacher ever when I was in school, she was wonderful. And there was one moment I remember in class that I will always remember. And she was talking about when you're working through some of the hardest stuff with people. And the natural response that most people, again, a safety response that we go through is this, like, I'm holding up my hands and pressing them away from me, like, get back. I don't want that. That's not mine. And what she said was, you know, our job as therapists is to do this. And she opened up her arms wide and she looked up and she closed her eyes and she just stood there with her arms wide open. And I remember it so clearly because what she was talking about was that we are not responsible for other people's pain and other people's trauma, but we are responsible to be able to open up to people's pain and to be able to stay with them in their trauma and to just allow space for it. And that's the same thing we have to do for ourselves, because if we can't do it for ourselves first, then we can't do that for other people. So I have to be able to open up to my own experience of pain and be okay with the way that it is, because it just is the way that it is right now, so that I can also be open to seeing the pain of other people and recognizing that that's their experience. Whether it's mine or not doesn't matter. Their experience matters. And the thing that I often, like, we'll talk with clients and we'll write down affirmations and mantras and stuff. And one of the things that I give people first is just the words, I matter. Because when you've been through a lot of hard stuff, it leaves you feeling like you don't matter. The things that you need don't matter. The things that you want don't matter. You as a person, maybe your body, the way that your body's been treated, you don't matter as a person. And so I think that through this range of experiences that's happened in the last 6 months, and especially when we look at this last week, we have to help ourselves and other people start with, I matter. We have to be able to support that in other people. And we have to get back to the root system of what's really going on with us individually, so that we can also be available to help other people through the stuff that they need help with.
And you used a phrase in there that I've heard recently, that I think I have an understanding of, but I don't know that I necessarily do. So could you tell us, what does it mean to hold space for somebody, and how do you do that? Yeah, how do you do that?
I think a lot of that comes down to the difference between sympathy and empathy. I don't really like the word sympathy because I feel like sympathy is like, oh, bless your heart. You know, I grew up in the South, and it's like the whole, like, oh, poor you, you know, that's terrible. Whereas empathy is the ability to recognize that we don't understand anybody else's experience because we haven't had it. But to say, I am willing to step into your shoes for just a minute and feel a little bit about what that might feel like. That's very different. And it feels different to people. It feels different when somebody empathizes with you and is with you in the intensity of what you're feeling, versus when they put the lip service to, oh yeah, I'm sorry, that's too bad. You know, so I think that that's how I understand it, at least. Being able to be with people in their trauma is to be able to hold the space of, I am not going to pretend like I get your experience. I am going to be with you in it as much as I can. That's what I have to do, because every person that comes in the office, they've had a different experience. It's going to be different than mine. And if I try to pretend like I understand who they are or what they've been through or what their life's been like or how the trauma they've been through has impacted them, then there will be like a separation between us, because I'm trying to be something that I'm not, you know? And I do think it starts at home. I have to know me. I have to know my stuff, so that I can be fully present to step into the shoes of somebody else.
Money, love it. So here's what I see a lot going on right now, and I do not have a bunch of letters after my name. So
you should.
Just TACO is my main letters afterwards there.
I love those letters.
So one thing that I see a lot of going on right now is a lot of my Black friends are expressing their hurt and pain and frustration and anger and these different emotions. And I've seen it from Black folks and white folks and different folks, like, turning it into some political statement, either for or against, right? The riots are actually not about George Floyd. It's about Antifa or whatever, right? Fill in the blank of the drama. And for me, again, not being a therapist or like that, but just being very passionate about people and empathy being one of my strengths, it's like, dude, like, stop talking about whatever is wrong with you or whatever injustices you feel in the world, or even the cops that did this horrible tragedy, or about, like, how about, like, just can we feel and understand their pain? Like, let's feel like, because what I've observed just in my, again, non psychologist, psychiatrist person self, that, and this is for personally too, not just in other people, but personally, if I don't feel heard and understood, I want to do a Facebook Live on this, on pain, just the whole thing's on pain. I got a whole bunch of notes. And one of my things is being heard is, and this is not official, okay, this is just Noble's philosophy here. Being heard is intellectual, being understood is emotional. And in my opinion, you've got to have both. You can't just have, because I've tried this. So I don't know, maybe some men have tried this before, but I got my wife upset about something and she's like, so I get her all spun up, whatever. And I say, sorry, babe. Sorry. Like,
okay, ladies, don't know.
Right?
That's not going to cut it.
Right. So intellectually, I said the right word. Oh, hey, sorry about George Floyd, or sorry about you've experienced racism before. Sorry, hey, sorry about that. Hey, my bad. Oh, hey, sorry about that. Like, okay, dude, like, I got that you said the right, that's the right letters. You spelled sorry right and all that stuff. But if I don't feel like you feel at least a little bit of my pain, that you know what I'm saying, that you understand me, then it's like, it doesn't matter what you say. Like, you're not going to do anything right. Well, we're going to start this campaign of, like, justice for all or whatever. It doesn't matter if I don't feel like you get me. Like, do you understand my pain? Like, forget about all this other stuff you're trying to do for me, man. Do you freaking feel me? Do you, am I seen? Am I heard? Am I understood? And I just feel like, so two other points is like, and I want to get your thoughts on this. Like, for me, it's been so powerful. So, like, if I could tell the whole country one thing, it would be, look, man, two words: validate and affirm. Validate, like, just, I understand you're hurting. I'm trying to understand the depth of your pain, and help me understand even better. I want, like, unpack it for me. Like, tell me, what are you angry about? Break it down for me. I want to understand. And like you're saying, really, not just intellectually and logically, but emotionally, step in their shoes, step in their space, and feel what they're feeling, get inside their skin, and really, and I feel like when I know, for me, when somebody does that for me, it almost, and again, you can tell me I'm smoking crack or whatever, but like, it almost, like, there's almost I would argue that there is a physiological response in me that, I feel all the angst and the energy and the stress and the rage and the frustration, like, almost like physically leaving my body. And again, I'm no ninja therapist or whatever, but I just think, man, if we could do better at not even trying to say the right stuff or whatever, but like, man, just how are you feeling? And I want to feel the same thing. Like, bring it. Like, let me feel your pain. Am I off track or am I on track?
I mean, knowing you the way I do, I know that you're on track, but I definitely resonate with that. And I think that what you're saying is profound and matters deeply and will only happen when we are able to open up our hearts and examine the things that need to be examined in ourselves first. Because if there are things going on in us that are messed up and ugly that need to be worked on, then we have to work on those things. And I hope this is an opportunity, a new opportunity that will continue to progress to help us all realize that there is a lot of hard work that needs to be done in order to be able to truly come alongside someone who is experiencing the greatest depth of pain that maybe they've ever experienced, and maybe to even hold with somebody the generations, their intergenerational trauma. We can see the way that it changes the structure of your body and your brain. Like it has a significant impact on your physiology. But the beauty of what's called mirror neurons, the way that we can sit across from each other and we can start to kind of align our brains to be able to have this reflecting experience back and forth, means that we can partner with someone in their healing. We can't heal for them, we can't fix it, but we can do our work. We can come alongside and be with, and I can allow my system to try to help regulate this other person's system so that they are able to start their healing journey.
That's amazing.
Because and that's a good word for that, because when someone has done that for me in both big stuff and little stuff, it absolutely feels like just a process of hearing and understanding somebody, again, intellectually and emotionally, that it absolutely helps activate the healing process. Yeah. You know what I mean? And I think, man, we if there was one thing that could really change somebody's relationships immediately, is begin seeking first to understand. Mm-hmm. Like, no, don't fix it for me. Don't give me the 8 points of how to fix racism or how to fix social injustice or how to save the whales or whatever the issue is. Just stop with the solutions, right? And how many times has Kathy told me that in our marriage, right? She comes to me with a problem, babe, 3 points, boom, here's how you fix it, and she's still tripping out. Like, I'm like, I just solved your problem. I literally just fixed you. You should be kissing me right now and giving me the koala bear hug, and you're angry, like, I don't, right? And she's like, dude, because you don't feel me, you don't understand what I'm feeling. And I'm like, what does that have to do with anything? Right? But as I'm growing emotionally, I'm like, well, crap, that's got a lot to do with a lot of stuff. Is just that process of and again, I'm an empath as well, right? Empathy is one of my strengths. And it's like, and some folks, I'm trying to make it logical why someone would logically want to do that. Obviously, I want to do it because I have a passion for connecting with people. But I think, man, if all of the humans, man, if we made more of an intentional effort to just do that, man, I think we would see some tremendous healing in so many different areas of our lives.
I think it's an amazing gift to give somebody, and it's an amazing way that we can right now in our society to love our neighbors. Right? To love our neighbors as ourselves. And I think that's the problem, is we don't do it for ourselves. We don't have, like you said, that self-awareness to hold space for ourselves and our own emotions. And so we're threatened by other people's emotions, and we're afraid of them, and we're, they don't feel safe because we're not safe with our own. Mm-hmm. And so, it's really a 2-part journey. And if we're not doing it for ourselves, I think it's very hard to do it for other people. It doesn't feel safe.
Well, and check this out, and it's funny, man, it's crazy. So, the current intense hot topic right now, of course, is the George Floyd, tragedy and stuff. And it's what's like two of my black buddies today, completely, they don't know each other, both irrespective. Is that right? So not together, or like did it separately, whatever, reached out to me and asked how I was doing. You know what I mean? Like, and like just the act, like talk about, again, I'm trying to pay attention to my feelings and stuff. Just the act of them, like, they're the ones that are experiencing this probably on magnitudes more intense than I am. And they reached out to me, like, seriously, like, come on, like, that's crazy talk. But what a blessing, just the act of reaching out and saying, hey, dude, I want to check in on you. How are you doing? And even if I didn't respond, the power of that question, hey, man, how are you doing? Like, I was shocked at the power of that question. From 2 of my buddies today, it was very powerful, very powerful. Let me ask you this, Bethany. So how do you feel we help each other heal? How do you feel we help the nation heal? You gave us some individual tactical stuff. Yeah. Is there some strategic stuff that we can do as well? What do you think?
Well, my personal theory, maybe I should call it a hypothesis. I don't have enough research yet, but I feel quite strongly that we could find every great tragedy that happens in the world, every great thing that enormous, overwhelming event, things that people experience individually or culturally, that there is a root system of trauma. And I will argue with people. I don't argue much, but I will argue with people about that all day long, because I think that we can always trace it back to trauma. Always. I've never found an example so far where I can't say, okay, but that person and their experience or their family's experience, or, that group of people and their experience that happened here. I just feel like that root system ends up going back to trauma. And then we just see the symptoms. We just see the stuff that comes as a result of trauma. So for me, my whole thing is like, well, if we just keep healing trauma, our own individually, and then creating space and creating systems where people can heal globally, I think that that's at least my solution to it. As far as what we can each do individually, we can do that work for ourselves. We can put our money where our mouth is to do that work in our communities. We can do that work individually with people around us, and we can speak when we need to speak. We can stay silent and listen when we need to listen. And then we start to see the way that people are operating out of pain. The world is experiencing pain, and we take it back to the root system and say, let's start healing the root system of this, instead of just talking about the behavior or the symptom or the stuff, the periphery of it.
Right. Love that. Wow. That's so powerful.
Could not agree with you more.
Yeah. 100%. One of the things I like to say is, this isn't original. Maybe half of it is, maybe it's not, but hurting people hurt people and are easily hurt by people. Yeah. Emotionally healed people help heal people emotionally. And I feel like the healthier that we can become ourselves emotionally, just being around emotionally healthy people is is helpful, right? And vice versa. When you're not around people that are emotionally healthy, it's not a positive experience. When you are around people, healthy people, emotionally healthy people, it's a different feeling. It feels different. Yeah. It just feels different. And so that's great, Bethany. That's great.
And do you have a recommendation for a resource, be it a book or a YouTube channel, maybe even something that you've created or you are creating? Like, do you have something that you could recommend for the average person, right? If you're not a therapist, or, obviously, like Bethany said, please see your counselor, see your therapist. Let's remove the stigma from that, because that's important to do. But yes, do you have any resources? And I would say, while you're giving that to us, tell us how people can learn more from you. Like, how can people
do we follow you,
get in touch with you, all of that?
Yeah. So my company is called Bravely Being. So you can find the website. You can find us on Facebook and Instagram. I am admittedly terrible at keeping up with Facebook and Instagram, but you'll see some stuff on there every once in a while, and I'm working on that. I have created a YouTube channel that has currently around 15 yoga classes that are all trauma-informed yoga classes. They're yoga for people that don't know how to do yoga, maybe haven't had good experiences with yoga. They're specifically designed for the therapeutic aspect of it, to benefit things like anxiety symptoms, depressive symptoms, sleep disturbance, stuff like that. And I'm working on some other content that I'm hoping to put out that's more of the psychoeducation piece. For other therapists, if you happen to have any therapists listen to this, I'm getting ready to become an EMDR consultant. I'm a consultant in training currently, so that I can start teaching other people about how to use EMDR more effectively as therapists. So that's all on the website. And then when it comes to books and stuff, there is a book that we kind of refer to as like the trauma Bible sometimes, that I wouldn't recommend reading if you are just getting started on your healing journey. But maybe if you're really interested in diving deeper into some of the stuff we've been talking about, the book is called The Body Keeps the Score. It's written by a man named Bessel van der Kolk, and he's done a great deal of research on some of these things that we've been talking about as far as the body and the brain pieces of trauma. It's a fascinating book, but just be prepared that there are some very triggering things in there, because there are many kind of clinical stories and situations used to help explain. And yeah, that's where I would start. And I release stuff on social media about resources as they pop up, so you can keep an eye out there.
That's great.
How important is emotional health?
I mean, I don't think that there's a way to quantify that. I think that we have to have emotional health to be able to be fully present as humans. I mean, if you numb one emotion, you're numbing them all. It's all or nothing. You either are feeling the full range of emotions safely, or you are not feeling any of them. So we've got to move through that process so that we can feel the depth of sadness and grief, but we also want to be able to feel profound joy. Like, we need to have it all turned on so that we can move through that range. The faucet has to be turned up all the way.
Wow.
That's money. A guy interviewed me earlier today. He's doing a research paper he's a veteran, and he's doing a project management degree and was doing a thing on emotional intelligence and leadership. And he kind of asked me a similar question, and I said, because he said, you feel like emotional intelligence training and those type of soft skills are important for leaders, kind of any kind of leaders. And I said, dude, and he said, like, he's like, who is emotional intelligence for, right? Is it like leaders? Like, what level of leaders? And I'm like, dude, that's like saying who is blood important for?
Who's breathing?
Right. For me, it's like, dude, you can't. And here's the thing: is like, you can't remove your decision-making process from your emotions. Like, even a guy like me, who, like, I would have argued with you 5 years ago that, oh no, I don't need to hear about emotions and feelings. I don't need to know about it. it doesn't affect me, right. In my EQ of a 2.5 week old probably. And it's because, so it's like your blood type. You can't not like, okay, try making decisions without your blood type. You can't, like, it's part of you, whether you're aware of it or not. There's no separating it. You can't, even for my buddies that are my hardcore logical, analytical, even those guys, they think, oh man, hey dude, I'm unemotional, It's like, no dude, I'm telling you, if you have a pulse, you cannot remove the impact of your emotions on your decision-making, on your being, personally or professionally. So does this soft skill stuff, does this emotional healthiness or lack thereof impact your business, your performance, your family, your faith, your finances? 100%. And again, I'm not a therapist, but you can't separate, right? Am I smoking crack or am I right? Is that right?
You are not smoking anything as far as I'm concerned. I am fully in agreement with you. It's true. It is like breathing. And when we feel like we don't need emotions or like emotions are not safe, that is one of the first things that we can recognize as, okay, that's the first step in my healing journey, because when I think that I don't need those emotions to be a full, healthy person, to be fully present in my life, then I know that is a sign of some work that needs to be done. So I love what you guys are doing with this podcast. It's huge. It's so important because you guys are bringing it to a community that doesn't get this information.
Right. That's great, Bethany. That's great. Well, one of the analogies that I had today, I thought was it helped me out, to be honest with you. For those folks in that category that, which was me, literally just a handful of years ago, that, hey, I don't need to know about emotions and feelings, and like, hey, that's for women, and I don't, all that kind of stuff. And now it's like, I can't believe how the clue bus like drove by and I did not get on it clearly for many, many years.
Well, but there were reasons for that. It's not like,
but yeah, like Bethany said, there were reasons for that. 100%. That's the first sign. And, but what God dropped on me today, he's like, dude, so it's almost like, in that those people that are walking around like me, again, 5 years ago, is literally, they're carrying a loaded gun and it is locked and cocked. And at any time that trigger is pulled, boom, the thing goes off. And who's ever on the business end of that is gonna get shot in the face or the chest, or whatever. Mm-hmm. And it's like, dude, what just happened? And this whole time I'm thinking, okay, well, my emotions and feelings don't affect me, when the whole time I've got a loaded weapon that's not safe for anybody, including me, right? And so I just think that the healthier emotion we can be as leaders and influencers and entrepreneurs and just people, humans, man, I feel like now we can start to begin that healing journey, that healing process for other people, and be safe. That's another huge thing too that I've noticed. Again, I'm not a therapist, but like the other huge thing, it seems to me, Bethany, again, correct me, but it's like, how this is money right here, is how can we become better at being safe?
Yeah.
How do you answer that?
So I am going to be a broken record a little bit, but I think that we become more safe for other people by first being able to be safe with ourselves. So if I am living my life outside of my own body and my own experience, because it doesn't even feel safe to be in my own body and in my own experience, then how can I be with anybody else to be safe for them? So my work is getting safe with myself, noticing, recognizing, working through my triggers that have to do with my hard stuff, my hard old stuff, getting through some of that stuff, being able to start the healing process. And I don't actually think that healing is something that stops. I don't think it's a process that starts and stops. I think we are always healing. We are always continuing to heal more and more. But if I'm able to start healing and I can feel safe with me, then I have a much better chance of being able to be a safe person for a lot of other people. And again, we've got these things happening between us all of the time. There's this exchange that's happening between us, our bodies and our brains, that is looking for that safety cue. Is this person present? Are they safe for me? Is this somebody that's going to be able to hold space for me? And we can hold the space for someone else when we can hold it for ourselves.
So last question, unless Kathy has another one,
okay.
is and I'm getting this question from a buddy of ours who's in the group, who's in the membership group. His name is Alex, and he is from Australia. And incredible dude. Oh my goodness. This guy is just unreal. Incredible guy. Young guy, 28, has traveled the world. His story is unreal. But he asked me a question that, it was just powerful. And I don't know that I've had thought about it until he asked me. And you're a gangster, pro ninja,
gangster,
emotional health gangster. And so, what, and you, it was a great segue based on your last response, so that we're always healing. But that being said, because I agree with you on that. In fact, our counselor that we've been using for a couple years now, he said he's 65, 66, has 20,000 hours, probably 25,000 hours in counseling. Like the dude is the OG, right? He's been doing this forever. And he's like, Noble, I'm still working on stuff from my childhood. And I was like, dude, 25,000 hours doing this, and you're not like, you haven't arrived yet? You know what I mean? Like, what?
Be good to go by now.
But it was really helpful for me. Like, okay, wow, even him, he's still working on stuff, and he's like the OG of like counselors. Okay, but that being said, though, so this question is kind of a version that Alex asked me. What does an emotionally healthy person look like? In this journey, right? So this year journey, 5-year journey, this lifetime journey, honestly, of emotional healing and health and emotional fitness and emotional growth, what's on the other side? What do we have to look forward to in this journey of emotional healing and growth?
I love that question, because one of the huge things that happens for people is they feel hopeless that things can ever get better. And then they get discouraged, and then they don't keep going, because it's like, oh my gosh, if I'm never going to heal, if I'm always healing, then what's the point? Because I don't want to feel like this forever. So I try to help people understand and remind them that with some of the stuff that gets stuck. So if there's stuff that is blocking you in your healing journey from being able to move forward, because there is a situation, a series of experiences, a series of messages about yourself that have held on tight for many years, those are the things, in my opinion, as a clinician, that are perfect for therapeutic interventions like EMDR, because sometimes we need something to help us move the needle. We just need an intervention that's going to help us move through something that we are stuck in. So it's like, it's okay if you don't get to the point where you can go through all of that on your own. You don't have to. You're not supposed to do that by yourself. Human beings, we're built for connection. We're built to be with other people and move through stuff with other people. But whether you get to that point, whether that's the intervention that's needed, or whether you do this work on your own, or you get a different type of therapy, when we move through hard stuff, we start to recognize that we can keep doing that. So we develop this resilience. There's a phrase called post-traumatic growth that is all about the fact that if we are moving through the hard stuff and we're no longer stuck in it, it builds this sense of self, this sense of resilience and ownership over who we are as people, where we are able to move into the next hard thing without becoming maybe so overwhelmed by it, because we're like, I know how I'm going to do. I know that I can get through this. I know that I'm going to be able to be a survivor of hard things. And when we're able to process emotion instead of feeling like we're always getting bogged down and stuck, or without those judgmental thoughts that just swirl, those negative ideas about ourselves, we get to a point where we can be fully present in the moment, which is really the only thing that we have. The depressive symptoms, that's past stuff. The anxiety symptoms, that's future stuff. When we're really fully here now, and the emotions that come up, we just notice them. The body symptoms that come up, we notice them, but it doesn't create this huge emotional upheaval. Then we can engage fully in our lives. We can experience moments that are beautiful and profound and meaningful without the hard stuff getting in the way. And that's when I see that people are getting to the point where they don't need me anymore. It's because they're getting to a point where they're being able to move through hard stuff, and they have this trust in themselves that I can do this, I can get through this. And I'm starting to experience really seeing my kid. Like, I see my kid, I look at my kid and I see them as a person. I don't feel like I'm stuck in my own stuff. I can be with them. I'm with my spouse. Like, I'm in my job and I'm passionate and excited because I have this range of emotion now where I can feel passionate and excited. So that, in my mind, is what's waiting. It's good stuff.
That is huge. Beautiful. That is huge. And I'll share, my 2 cents is I also feel like one of the benefits is, I'll say 2 things. For me, one of the benefits has been that the intensity of the stuff that I have experienced slowly has less and less intensity. Now, it doesn't happen overnight. It's not, I read a book and all of a sudden I'm healed and all that stuff. But the intensity slowly goes away as I get healthier and healthier. The other dynamic that I have observed is so let's say I'm working on this area emotionally, right? And for those that are maybe listening to the podcast, I'm working on my left finger, okay, and whatever that trauma was or that issue was in my life. And what's been fascinating is, because again, I'm relatively new to this whole EQ journey, this emotional health journey, growth journey, is that like 3 of my fingers on my right hand start feeling better, right? And I'm not saying like my physical actual fingers, but just I get one area of my life healed, and it heals 3 other areas of my life that I was not even
that seem unrelated.
Yeah, totally unrelated, and I'm like, I wasn't even thinking, I didn't even know I had issues in these other 3 areas. But like when one area gets healed, it's somehow crazily connected to other areas that we're not even aware of. And here's the other dynamic. The third area I would say is, and it kind of is a follow-on of the second one, is that, I feel like we are master survivors as humans and stuff. And man, how many areas of my life, but it feels like we get so used to being dysfunctional. I've gotten so used to the knot in my stomach. I don't even like, if someone say, hey, how do you feel? Fine. Do you feel a knot in your stomach? I'd be like, no, I don't have a knot in my stomach, but it's like, no, it's knotted right now. Right. And so because we're so used to being dysfunctional and here's the thing is like, we don't even know it is dysfunctional. We just think that's normal. And as you start to heal these different areas, it's like, oh snap! I didn't even realize my stomach was knotted, but man, it's been knotted for, I didn't remember when it wasn't knotted, kind of thing. And so those are just a few things. And the other thing too, I guess the fourth thing would be that, this one's a super real one too. Because I have definitely had phases in my life where I have funks, where I've gone through like fogs, like it's just like this dark cloud kind of thing, and it's just hard to see, it's hard to think, it's hard to all this stuff. And when I've gotten healing in different areas, like the fog clears, the smoke clears, and there's becomes clarity and confidence, and I like what you said, presence, where I feel like I can be. I mean, how many times in our marriage? Oh my gosh, like where Kathy's like, dude, like. Where I haven't been present. It's
like a zombie.
Yeah, I'm literally like a zombie where I'm not mentally, emotionally present. I mean, maybe pseudo mentally, but definitely not emotionally. And man, what impact does that have? You know what I mean? Like not just for me, forget about me, but like my wife, my daughter, my friends, my family, my business partner, all these different things. And so there's just so many things that emotional healing has. My faith, are you kidding me? My faith. This is, man, God dropped this on me too. You can't, this, and I've never studied this biblically, so some Bible people may just like throw the Bible at me right now, but I don't care. This is my own experience, so they can pound sand. But I have not been able, let me just put it in my terms. I have not been able to out-faith my low EQ. My EQ has hindered my faith for many, 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 many years because, and here's the other thing too, self-sabotage. I got a PhD in that too. If anyone wants to know how to do that, I can, that's not the kind of business I want to get to. But it's like, as God has blessed me, different areas of my life, I will slowly but surely, the more and more God starts to bless, whoa, hold on, I don't deserve that. Well, I don't, and I'll start to self-sabotage all these different areas, not consciously. I'm talking on the DL. And so I'm seeing these different areas that are getting healed, and now my faith is starting to grow, and these different areas that were quenched by all my stories and limiting beliefs and all this stuff. It's like, as these different areas are getting healed, it's like, whoa, like the world is opening up. You know what I mean? So anyway, those are just a few thoughts. Any final thoughts, Bethany? What would you like to share for any listeners, audience, as they're going through their emotional growth journey? And you could repeat it again. If it's something that you've already said, you can say something new, but something that you feel would help people along their emotional growth journey.
You're not crazy. You matter. It's okay to be where you are. You don't need to be any further along than you are. Just be here now. It takes an enormous amount of courage to do the kind of work that we're talking about. So don't coerce or pressure yourself into being something that you're not, or pursuing something that you're not ready for yet. Just notice what it might be like to have enough grace for yourself to create space so that you can take a little tiny step forward. And if you take that little step forward, then there are probably going to be more steps, little ones, until over time you might start to see something big happen in your life.
That's humongous. That's huge. Awesome. That concept of pacing yourself on this journey, I feel is so important, because there have been times where I've been overwhelmed with this whole journey. Like I'll get hit with a Mack truck of emotions, and it's like, okay, I pump the brakes. Like I got to slow my roll. But you're saying that's okay to do that.
100%. Because if the whole point is that we're going to rebuild the ability to feel safe, then how can we feel safe if we're pushing ourselves into something that we're not ready for? So being safe with ourselves and with other people means we get to be where we are, and it's okay. So you're ready to do the next thing, and then you're not ready. Okay, cool. All right, that's great. It doesn't matter, because as long as you're being present and you're noticing it, then that's progress in and of itself. It doesn't have to be something huge. The huge thing happens because of these little tiny micro moments that happen throughout the day for days and weeks and months. The change happens, but it's not this big thunderclap moment. It's just making the decision that I'm going to trust my ability to choose to be safe today, right now, with myself, whatever that means.
That's money.
One of the thoughts that popped into my mind as you were saying that, you said something to the effect that it's tiring, or it takes energy or something. I remember exactly what you said, but I know for me, it has been exhausting, not just emotionally and mentally, but physically. And I had to just allow myself physical rest. And just like you said, just physical rest and physical space to do that. Because it'll make you tired working on this stuff.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I know every time that clients leaving the office after doing EMDR, I'm like, remember, you just did an emotional marathon. Literally, your whole nervous system feels like you just ran a marathon. So like, this is all about, the prescription is all the self-care, all the taking care of yourself, all of the nurture, because that's what we need. This stuff that gets stored in our bodies and our brains, when we're processing through it, we're shedding trauma when we shake and when we sweat and when we cry, and it's exhausting. So just being in that is enough. And even noticing the exhaustion shows us that we're making some progress forward too.
Bethany.
Two words. You are amazing.
I was just going to say, I cannot thank you enough for being here with us today, for sharing. I mean, this is a message the world needs right now. The world has needed for a long time, but especially right now, because I feel like our trauma is in our faces. We can't ignore it. And it's not going away unless we heal it. And I just thank you. You're amazing. We appreciate you.
Yes. And I can't wait for my big, giant anti-social distancing hug with you and Big Jack.
No, we're so ready.
Yes. And you guys need some self-care by coming to Colorado to visit us.
Clearly.
Oh, we do. Yeah, we do. We're waiting for the whole military to let us travel and be free birds so we can come and see you guys.
That's
awesome.
Thank
you. It's always a joy to be with you guys anytime. I love it.
Likewise, Bethany. Love you.
Appreciate you guys.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Bethany.
Love you guys.
We'll see you. Bye-bye.
Bye.